We just had a massive over-the-air update for Marvel Snap, and honestly, cruising through all the data, I'm super optimistic about what this format looks like. Early, we're going to start off with my pocket picks. We'll look at some high potential things with smaller sample sizes, and then we'll dive on into the tried and true decks that are putting up solid stats early. Let's go ahead and dive into it, shall we? We'll kick off my Jeff's picks this week with my favorite way to play with our buffed Mad Titan Thanos so far, featuring our latest season pass card in Surtur. Past Thanos himself, we have Sasquatch, Blob, Cull Obsidian, and Scar that all turn on our demon, and Mockingbird, under a lot of circumstances, thanks to Okoye and Fastos, often gets up to 10 points of power in this deck as well to power up the demon. I like that this build gets to leverage Kyera as a way to protect a lot of its large threats, with another key card being Black Swan as one that really impressed me, because activating her on turn 3 or 4 to play out a bunch of stones early set us up for really nice Mockingbird and Sasquatch plays in the later turns of the game. If you want to see this deck in action, be sure to check out the link to my secondary deck highlights channel in the description down below, where I posted a highlight with it this morning. As far as higher series card replacements go, I think Scar and obviously Thanos and Surtur are pretty key here and not replaceable. You can replace a mix of the other higher powered cards with things like Crossbones and Magneto, depending on what's available in your collection. And Fastos is a card that, while fun, I would never recommend anyone spend resources on. Probably swap him out for something like Nakia or perhaps even Forge to get your Mockingbird up to 10 a little more consistently. I'd like to take a quick second to tell you about Into the AM, one of my favorite sponsors who I've been working with for years now. They make this awesome shirt that I'm wearing right now and all of these fantastic designs plus more that are scrolling to my right. Into the AM is having their biggest sale of the year now through December 8th for Black Friday and Cyber Monday. You get up to 60% off of everything on their site, plus save an additional 10% with my link in the video description down below. I have over 30 of their shirts in my closet at this point. They are high quality stuff that look awesome and feel great to wear. It's genuinely difficult to put other clothing on after I spent so much time in their fantastic stuff. If you're looking to pick up a holiday gift that people are almost assuredly going to love, that has a unique flavor and feel to it, be sure to check them out using my link and save some extra money while their biggest sale of the year is going on. My second just pick this week is a classic Darkhawk bounce deck that I actually threw together because I was sorting through my cosmetics and noted that I had all of these cards with an inked finish and a Kirby Crackle border effect. It really kind of rekindled my love for Marvel Snap, playing it both on and off stream. It was a reminder that you don't have to be playing with the newest and shiniest things, or even things that are recently buffed in the over-the-air updates to have a good time. Snap's regular balance cadence does a pretty good job of making sure that decks like this, that I loved a long time ago, can stay relevant and I can play them without feeling embarrassed, even if they're not at the absolute top of the metagame. I think the mix of proactive disruption in this deck, Iceman, Korg, and Rockslide, in tandem with solid cards that put numbers into play like Darkhawk, Collector, and Bishop, means you can have a chance in most of the games that you're playing. Toxin is the only somewhat recently released card in this deck, but I do think he is a must-have if you're a bounce enthusiast such as myself. We kick off our high potential category this week with this Thanos Death variation, the best performing Thanos deck on Untapped so far. If you're not familiar with my classifications here, high potential deck lists are ones that have really impressive stats on Untapped early on in a format like this, but they also have smaller sample sizes, meaning that as more people pick it up and play it, it could be the next breakout thing, or its stats could come back down to earth/mediocrity and end up just being okay. That being said, I like the look of what this deck has going on. You've got Lady Deathstrike, Killmonger, and Misery to clear out your stones, giving you extra space on the board, which is something Thanos decks often struggle with, while simultaneously enabling Death to be a big top-end finisher alongside the Mad Titan himself and Mockingbird. This deck list tops itself off with a couple of potent tech cards in Shadow King and Shang-Chi, as well as Chase Series 5 cards like Fastos and Cull Obsidian. Again, like I mentioned earlier, I would never recommend anybody spend resources on Fastos. I think you could sub him out for a tech card of your choosing, Red Guardian, Luke Cage, Mobius, and be along your happy way, still winning plenty of games of Marvel Snap. Our next high potential deck list features Ronan the Accuser, as well as our latest card release in Malekith. Now, I know what you're thinking. The last dozen Ronan the Accuser decks I've highlighted as high potential deck lists on this channel did not pan out, but I've got a feeling. Assuredly, this one's going to be different, right? Right? There's a lot of neat things going on here. The first is that we have Anti-Venom as an inclusion here who doesn't mind hitting Iron Man or Ronan or Mystique as reasonable things to be doing for 0 energy. Even Maximus, Master Mold, and Grandmaster are solid at the end of the game with a 0 energy cost to make our stat lines bigger. Malekith grabs a pretty decent range of things here, with Mystique being a notable one because the way she works, so long as we end on Iron Man or Ronan, her flipping up under Malekith will let her copy that effect, being pretty difficult to interact with. The deck list also has a dash of disruption in itself, both Cassandra Nova to make opposing Surtur decks a bit worse, making their 10s down to 9s, as well as Killmonger to blow away opposing 1-drops and to be a little bit more common in the face of Thanos. As far as higher series substitutions go, Speed and Cassandra Nova are definitely cards that are just generically good 3 energy things, so stuff like Polaris, Spider-Man, or even tech cards like Red Guardian and Luke Cage can be fine there. Grandmaster, I think, is a pretty unique one that you likely want to have. Re-triggering Malekith or Anti-Venom can be pretty powerful, who I think are likely required for this as well. And then Hydra Bob could probably sub out for a different high-power, low-cost thing that Malekith can fish up, such as Silk, or even a copy of Lizard. Our last high potential deck list is an updated take on the Dracula dump archetype, hitting in a couple different interesting ways. Firstly, we've got the freshly buffed Destroyer back up to a 16-point stat line, who you can either bin to Dracula or 0 out so he doesn't blow away your board. We've got Black Swan making your 1 energy cards completely free, so you can play a massive hit monkey on the final turn of the game. And we've got War Machine kind of tying the room together, so you can play out Ebony Maw on the last turn, or even slam your Infinite after making plays on the 5th turn. I like a lot of what this deck list is doing, and honestly, seeing a fairly fair point slam deck like this, not leaning on tech cards, makes me pretty optimistic for how this format's going to feel moving forward. I think Marvel Snap is at its absolute best when tech cards are a tool you can reach for, but not one that you absolutely have to be playing. Tech cards you can reach for. Moving into our top performing decks, we kick things off with Sarah Control that will hopefully help put to bed the idea that Agent Venom, after being adjusted, is not still an incredibly powerful card. This deck list is very similar to ones that we saw being successful from before the OTA. You've got Killmonger, Rogue, Shadow King, and Red Guardian as ways to disrupt your opponent, but you also have a really solid proactive game plan with US Agent, Bishop, Hitmonkey, Mysterio, and Agent Venom alongside Gwenpool, giving us a solid way to put numbers into play for ourselves. Invisible Woman remains a noteworthy call-out since you can tuck tech cards behind her, meaning your opponents aren't even able to play for not having priority, since your cards will always flip up last. Our next top performer is an Ajax variation featuring our latest card release in Malekith, as well as Anti-Venom as headlining cards. Anti-Venom absolutely loves these deck lists that are looking to be playing Luke Cage anyway, since Luke Cage completely undoes the downside of wiping away your card's power, and Malekith is a really organic addition to this deck that's essentially always trying to draw Luke Cage and Hazmat before the game ends. You mix in some various utility cards like Juggernaut to push your opponent's stuff around, and Red Guardian, who not only enables Ajax but also shuts off key things on the opponent's side of the board, and you've got a really deadly cocktail of cards that are difficult to keep up with. Our next top performer is a variation of Dracula Discard, which is an archetype that has just been tried and true for some time now in Marvel Snap. Again, just pretty honest stats on the board with Morbius, Dracula, and Apocalypse, and then MODOK obviously tying the entire room together to dump your hand. It's worth noting that in addition to this fairly classic list that I'm showcasing right now, we also have this variation featuring our newest card in Malekith that's putting up results as well. The sample sizes on both are so a little bit on the small side, so it's unclear to me from a data-driven perspective which is better, but I'm definitely going to have to get some reps in with Malekith Discard next week on stream to see if I can develop a somewhat subjective opinion on which of the two I prefer. I would love to hear in the comments down below if you've played both and what your thoughts on the differences might be. Finally, the one not so small stain on this format is definitely the fact that Erishim is putting up results as a top performing deck after our latest OTA. A pile of tech cards, an insane amount of variants, and Goliath to blow away all the joy you've been experiencing that day on the 6th or 7th turn. And this deck list is definitely pretty powerful and potent. At least you could retreat for one when you're playing against it on the ladder, but it's definitely the one sore spot for me in this otherwise pretty reasonable looking Marvel Snap format. Quips about Erishim aside, I'm pretty optimistic about this format after our recent set of over-the-air update changes. I think Second Dinner did a stellar job of pulling down the ceiling on some of the top-performing decks really well, so I don't feel obligated to shove tech cards in absolutely everything. We have a lot of classics like Bounce and Discard putting up solid results. We have some Thanos deck lists that might be promising after his change, and even our latest card release in Malekith is showing up in some spots where it looks like he's showing promise. I would love to hear in the comments down below if there's any deck lists you've been finding success with that I should consider giving a try with. And as always, if you want to see a bunch of these decks in actions, especially my just picks, be sure to check out the link in the video description down below to my secondary channel where I post daily Marvel Snap deck highlights. Final shout out to our sponsor of today's video, Into the AM, maker of the wonderful shirt that I'm wearing right now and so many others in my wardrobe. They're having their biggest sale of the year right now through December 8th. Be sure to check out their link in the description down below to save a little bit extra with my code Hoaglandia, and hopefully you get some sweet stuff for yourself or someone that you care about in this upcoming holiday season.